time for a February wrap up. Is it almost the end of March? Yeah. Anyways, I read seven whole books, so let's jump into it. All right. So started off the March. No, wait. My brain. Okay, started off February. February wrap up. Started off the month with Girls Like Girls by Haley Kiyoko, and oh my God, the feelings I had while reading this, the will they, won't they, that pulled on my heartstrings and had me anticipating every word. Ugh. So basically, Coley, who's the main POV, uh, ends up living with her estranged father after losing her mother. She's a teenage girl on the verge of adulthood, high emotions and tensions, and she's dealing with the loss and going from a large city to the middle of nowhere with her dad that she doesn't know. So, yay. Uh, and only like out of nowhere, she gets like only for her to like get sidelined by catching feelings for this one girl. But like she doesn't know how she would respond if she like confessed to her, you know? Because like queer love and wondering if someone is receptive to you is like one of the greatest struggles, especially if you're like in the middle of nowhere and you have no idea how she would even respond to implying that, you're gay, she's gay, anyone is gay, that being queer exists. And, that playing into the tension and the will they, won't they, and you know, it it made it intense at times because it was just like gut wrenching because you're just like, oh my gosh, is this gonna work out in the end for like both of them? And of course, kind of end up rooting, or at least I did, rooting for the main POV more than the love interest, but whatever. Uh, but it was a journey, and I just hoped, like, through it all that, like, Coley, like the main character, ended up where she wanted to be at least. And, I loved it. It's what love, young love is all about. It's bittersweet, but oh God, when it works out, it just melts your heart. There is a bit of violence, as tensions run high and, love and war and all that jazz. And they're, teenagers with raging hormones. There's a bit of confrontation, and then there is a fight, and that does result in like someone end up like bleeding, but like nothing too serious. A bat getting swung around in one instance, and um, someone, some punches getting thrown back and forth. But other than that, like it's really great. I mean, it's based off of Haley Kyoko's song "Girls Like Girls," and like the music video, I loved listening to, and getting like the full story behind the song because basically, if you see the music video, you can kind of anticipate what this book is about. And I just ended up watching the music video again after finishing this book because I loved all of it. I loved I love the book. I love the song. I love the artist slash writer. So if you love like all those things, then like totally, totally check it out. And then next, I read The Seven Principles for Making Marriage Work, a practical guide from the country's foremost relationship expert. A mouthful, but really great because, you know, things fall apart and then you try to look at only like the bad or like what like the final straw. But like you gotta look at what made the haystacks that broke the camel's back. And how do you avoid even having that buildup, And even if your relationship's good, I still recommend it. Even if you're not in a relationship, it's a really good book. If only because like the practices and exercises in it for communication and vulnerability is just like really great. Like in general, for any like relationships you have, friendships, family, all that. It's really good at analyzing what makes for good partnerships. And even though there isn't any queer representation, they do address that at least. They talk about how, you know, being openly queer is relatively new. And studying like those social dynamics, without, you know, people being the same gender or not having to adhere to such strict gender roles also, it plays a part of that. So even though there isn't really queer representation, it's still like really good information to have just because like the practices and exercises in it are just really good in general for healthy communication and like good relationship building. So definitely recommend it. Definitely loved it. Next, I read, oh my gosh, Nightbitch. This is one of my new favorite books. Like, oh, I wasn't sure where it was going, but damn, did it leave me like post book high afterwards. I loved it. It starts off with, every woman's struggle in modern day of having a child while also working. And sure, she's married, a good husband too. And of course, she adores her baby. Everything she's given up, she's done so, you know, willingly. It was her choice. But damn it all, if she isn't losing her mind, like literally. At first, she tries to balance her art career and her baby, but something eventually has to give. And so she stays home with the baby. And while she doesn't regret it, she does struggle with it. And then her body starts changing, and it's subtle at first, but eventually it's clear that she just might be turning into something. And, she starts to freak out. She might be turning into like a werewolf, but like, then she's like, would that be a bad thing if I was a werewolf? And it's really cool because, like, she even addresses, like, she has a good husband and he's not there for a reason, but still, like, the contradictions that she has to live with, being a woman, like, sure, you can have it all, or sure, it's okay to be a stay-at-home mom, but then it's like, no, you have to have it all, and no, you can't be a stay-at-home mom, and like, uh, but, like, halfway through the book, like, the first half I would say is feminist rage feel, like, yeah. And then the second half, I did not know where it was going, but I loved how it ended, like, nonetheless. Like, it was a wild ride, but I love it, and the title, it starts off as a half joke, her being called a night bitch, but soon it like turns into an acceptance and an embodiment of who she is becoming and who she wants to be. Losing her mind and being a mom and being tug of war and what she should do to be a good mom and how that like humanly isn't possible without, just running yourself ragged. Like, how is she supposed to make everyone happy at the expense of her own happiness? Because, like, that's not fair. Uh, and it made my blood boil when she went on, like, these, like, oh my gosh, these peak speeches about, like, the struggles she's dealing with. And I just wanted more. I just devoured this book, basically. And then, it does turn softer. It does turn reflective because, it's easy to set the world on fire. It's harder to make the world better. And I love the balance of it, like how it's like, the rage and then the gentleness. And it was just a wild ride that I definitely would recommend. If you enjoy like the art scene, especially like performing art and like interpretive art, then definitely read this book. If you're a feminist, read this book. If you're a mom, read this book. I can't stop thinking about it. I really loved it, and I just was just like, oh my gosh, and it wasn't like, oh, it's over, kind of like I want more, like there's so much more that could have been said. It was like all that was said was what needed to be said. And I'm just sad that it's over. That I couldn't have savored being in it longer. And it's definitely going on the favorite shelf. Next, I read Snake Falls to Earth. And that, yeah, it's a good book. A little bit of violence, there's a guns get shot. And then like, you know, it is a really cute book. It really is, but it's definitely something I would recommend for like middle school. If you want like a chill middle school read, then yeah, definitely read this book. But it's pretty laid back. I mean, it is a middle school book, but I love that it incorporated indigenous lore into the narrative, and they gave me information steadily, and it never felt like info dumping, which I always appreciate when books can actually do that well, because it's like, don't expect me to read a textbook. I hate that. Like, how am I supposed to like get into the story if I'm busy trying to comprehend the story? Anyways, the main POV is Nina, and she's like a young Lipan girl who ends up in a lot more trouble than she asked for when she tries to unravel the last story her like I believe great grandmother. It's hard to remember off the top of my head. Um, but before she passes away, she tells her this one last story, and she has to decode it because it's in such an old language that is barely remembered. And so it takes her years to figure out what this last story was and what it meant. Because it was passed down to her from like, her grandmother and so forth. And then you have the secondary POV, which is follows Ollie, a cottonmouth kid. So he's like half person, half spirit. Well, we're like half spirit, half animal. We're like animal spirit. uh, the book explains it so much better. But anyways, in the land of spirits, he basically is a humanoid cottonmouth who can take on the shape of a cottonmouth, and he's venturing on his own, venturing forth on his own, trying to be an adult and settle somewhere because, his family's like, you can't stay at home because then eventually we'll run out of resources. So it's important for you to go out into the world and find your own little spot. And, through their own like journeys and trying to, protect their family, they end up crossing paths and their journeys end up interweaving and they end up needing each other. Um, and it has just like a lot of fun elements that was a joy to read. And there is some fighting, death is mentioned. But the most part, I don't think it's anything too gruesome to recommend to young readers, but that's just my own opinion. Uh, but yeah, it was a fun read. I liked it. Then I read Devon and Kris Plan a Wedding. And if you love MTV reality TV shows, then you're probably going to love this book, especially if you've always wanted one with queer people and like real deal feelings involved. Because Devon and Kris each sign up as contestants for the show for their own reasons, but each is basically in it to win it. And they have to like the premise of the show that they're on is that you have to convince your families that you are this person that they've never met before. You have uh, been in a relationship with them, and to the point that you want to get married to them in the next 6 weeks, and you have to get your family involved in planning the wedding while convincing them that you've been in a relationship with this person, even though not only are they meeting them for the first time, you only just met them yourself. And so that's where the hard part of the show comes in. But they are like on it with the line because it seems like maybe, just maybe, they might have feelings for each other that are interweaving with the lies. So there might be some truth to what they're saying. And because those lines start to blur, like what is the truth and what is a lie, that, you know, this will they or won't they starts to play in. Like, will they be able to overcome their like inability to stand like how do I put it? Like, will they be able to not only like win the show, like convince their families up until the point till they're at the altar that they are getting married and that they love this person and they've known them, and will they be able to convince one another that their feelings are real, not only like to themselves but to the other person, like because of course they've said things while like pretending, but then it's like, well, when the camera's not on, are those feelings still real? And it gets hot and heavy, of course. um it was good. I'm not really into reality TV shows, and but if it was a fun read, so if you're into them, I'd say definitely read it because it's kind of like if you're not really into those kind of shows, because like yeah, it's just a matter of preference. But Anyways, onwards to what I read next. I read Winter Counts and oh my God, two new favorite books this month. Uh, basically, I like this is one of my new favorite books, also along with Nightbitch. Like it's an intense read that takes place on the Rosebud Indian Reservation. Virgil Wounded Horse is the main POV, and he's basically a local enforcer who's more like a vigilante for hire. And he isn't the greatest guy, but he does his best to be there for his nephew. Like that's basically to him his son, because like a lot of like Western culture, like family and like titles and like all that, like there's defined lines of closeness, right? Like you wouldn't put your neck out for your nephew as much as you would for your own son. But like that's not always true for a lot of cultures. If your family is your family. It doesn't matter how far in the family tree you are. If you're in the family tree, you're family. Um, so anyways, yeah, like his nephew's basically his son and he tries to be there for him, but pushing a rock uphill. Uh, but then shit really hits the fan when his nephew gets swept up in some trouble and he's trying to make the right choice. But the mess just keeps getting bigger and bigger as they like continue to dive into it because they're trying to figure this out. And as they figure it out, they realize like it's just massive what's actually going on and what they've been dragged into. And he struggles with who is, who he is, as someone who is indigenous, where he comes from, being a part of that reservation, and then like protecting his nephew and how all these things just play together. And, it was thrilling and intense. And as they work their way like through, self-discovery and then like the mystery of what's really going on at the reservation. And then, you know, it's oh my gosh, like the feeling like of wanting to own this book when this book finished. Because it was audiobook, really good. And there's some dark moments, there's violence, there's blood, there's guns, there's drugs, but it's also like these really good moments when he's like reconnecting with his ex, when he's being a better uncle for his nephew and you know trying to find himself so that he can be better of a man and do right by his nephew, be the kind of person that his nephew needs, the parental figure that he should be to be able to help him, be better than himself, to provide opportunities and growth that he didn't have. But for him, it's one of those like just growth stories that are just really great. And usually I don't like open-ended endings, but like this book couldn't have ended better. Like it ended and I was just like, that was good. That was like good start to finish. I didn't know where it was going, but like how did I not see it? It was like a really good like thriller, like murder. Well, I don't want to say murder mystery, but like a good thriller, good mystery, you know? Uh, yeah. Anyways, last but not least, because also a good book, An Unquiet Mind, a memoir of moods and madness. Like this is really good. Like I definitely enjoyed this. It was a short read, but it definitely resonated with me. The author is struggling with her mental health, but eventually, is able to accept that it is a part of her. And that's not necessarily good or necessarily bad, but she starts to really look at it and accept it as a part of herself. And because, it's having not addressed it really was giving her so much more agony, through the years and causing her so much like stress that when because she's a doctor, and so when she finally is like, what, I could help people like me if I just really looked at myself, and I related to a lot, and I resonated a lot with her story. It's about her life and how her mental illness, the goods and the bads of it all, and how she just kind of ended up accepting it. you know? And it was comforting in an odd way. You know, it was a short but delightful read. It was a great way to end the month. All right, that was February. Short month, so well, I kind of want to try to read 10 books a month. I didn't quite get there, but maybe I'll make up for it in March. Anyways, let me know if like you read any of these books, you agree with anything, or like you totally don't agree with me. Uh, because like Nightbitch and Winter Counts, two new favorite books, hands down. So ready to talk about those. Uh, but yeah, see you next month. Bye.